Hello, and welcome to this episode of AML Backstage. I have with me today Sarah Cohen, who is the head of music technical services here at the Warren D. Allen Music Library. Thanks for the interview.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I guess I want to start by asking this. You have a very grand title. What is it that you do precisely with a title so grand?
Well, what it means is that I'm in charge of all the stuff that happens to an item when it's not on the shelf. I'm also in charge of making sure that people can find an item. And that may sound like a simple thing, but it isn't always a straightforward process.
Well, simple certainly doesn't mean easy.
That's right.
Right. So what then is the most important thing you do for the library that no one ever sees? Although your job, it sounds like a lot of it is things that you don't see. You don't see an organizational system that helps you find something per se.
That's exactly right. A mentor of mine once said that if technical services folks in a library are doing their job properly, nobody has to even know they exist. So we are definitely behind the scenes people, although we do take our turn out at the circulation desk during normal times. And that is our opportunity to actually see the patrons and see what's going on. And it's very helpful because we sometimes learn things from those interactions that we wouldn't normally find, that people are having difficulty finding things because of one reason or another.
So on that note, what would you say is the most useful piece of information that you've ever received in feedback like that, either from a patron or from an interaction outside of that?
Well, I'm thinking of one particular time when a patron was looking for a particular set of songs, and she specifically wanted the high voice version. And it turned out that what we had on the shelf in one particular call number said it was the highest voice version, but it really wasn't. It had been miscatalogued. So we had to do a little bit of scrambling around. Fortunately, we found that we actually had the item in the high voice version, and that was useful information because who knows how many years it's been wrong, and we didn't know that.
Right. And you mentioned just in passing during normal times, you would be out at the desk sometimes. This implies that you have been around to see the normal times here at the Warren D. Allen Music Library.
That is correct. I have actually been here at the Allen Music Library since July of 2000, so nearly 21 years at this point. And before that, I worked in the technical services department for university libraries. You see, before 2000, the Allen Music Library was considered a part of the university libraries, and all of the technical services functions were done in the central facility. So I cataloged music starting in December of 1994 through June of 2000. And then I moved over here, and I much prefer being over here because, first of all, I get to be around musicians, which is really cool. And secondly, I get to have the more immediate feedback from patrons. And also, if I need to check something that's on the shelf, I just have to go upstairs. It's so easy rather than having to request things.
So you mentioned being around musicians. I myself am not one, nor am I a music major, and so being at the Warren D. Allen Music Library, sometimes I sort of feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone episode where the guy breaks his glasses and he can't read any of the books in the library. And I love to read, and so I'm surrounded with these books, most of which I can't read. Do you have a music background yourself?
Yes, I do. I'm a flutist, and I received a bachelor's degree in music education from FSU. And I taught middle school band for a while. Then I came back to FSU and got a master's degree in music and decided at that point that maybe band directing wasn't the way that my life really was, what it was really cut out for. Right. So I sort of stumbled into this music cataloging job, again, at the University Library's Technical Services Division, and I've been doing this ever since.
And obviously, I assume you enjoy it. You've been here at this same institution for so long, doing the same things. What do you find to be the most satisfying part of the job?
The most satisfying part is when I hear that somebody was able to find exactly what they need. Because ultimately that's what our job is all about.
Right. And on that note, I think you would probably describe yourself as a problem solver, or one who makes it so that the problems don't happen in the first place.
Exactly. We try to get it right the first time. We don't always succeed, which is why we end up with situations like the one I described earlier. And although I have been around here for a long time, I'm not the only one who's ever cataloged music. There have always been other people beside me, and there were plenty of people before me, of course. So sometimes we find things that were done strangely years ago and we have to correct them. Or we find something that isn't fully described. And a good portion of our job is the description of items, making sure that there's enough information in the catalog record so that somebody who doesn't know all the tricks of searching could find it easily. And music is a little bit more difficult to describe than, say, a book, because a book, whether it's a physical book or an ebook, it has a title, it has an author, it has subjects that it's about, and that's pretty much all you need. But with music, you need as much information as possible to find the right thing. Beethoven wrote a lot of sonatas.
Right.
Which one are you looking for? And that's where having an expertise in music really helps.
Right, because you can't really subdivide Beethoven's sonatas by subject matter.
Right.
Or topic.
Yes.
That makes sense. I'd like to ask a little bit about you before going into the final question, which is more professional in nature. What's something that no one would know about you unless you told them?
I'm married to the guy who owns Lofty Pursuits.
I was hoping you would bring this up. So I've told you this before, but Lofties was the place where I had my first date with the woman who is now my wife. So Lofties occupies a very special place in our heart. It's a really tremendous place, but I suppose the question that I would ask in connection with that is, what's the best ancillary benefit that you receive from that connection?
I think it's all of the strange and wonderful things and people that are connected with that establishment. The foremost, of course, being my husband. He's pretty strange and wonderful at the same time.
Right. What do you like to do in your own free time?
Oh, in my own free time, I like gardening, I like cooking, I like reading. Of course, I'm a librarian. That's kind of expected.
Right.
I play in a couple of different musical organizations. I am in the Tallahassee Winds, and I am also the chief cook and bottle washer for the Lofty Pursuits Marching Band.
Hey.
Which is a community adult marching band made up mostly of alumni marching chiefs, but we also have people who went to other schools as well, and it's a lot of fun.
Gotcha. I don't garden, but I do cook, so I have to ask, with your garden, to me there's two kinds. There's flower garden, and then there's vegetable garden, or derivative thereof. For you, what kind of gardening do you prefer to do?
I prefer vegetable gardening because you can eat what you grow.
Perfect. My last question for you is, what does the future of this position look like as libraries move into a more digital space? I mean, we've seen just from the recent pandemic how our institution has had to change, and other institutions are going through similar growing pains. What does the future of something like what you do look like, if you can divine such a thing, in the future?
Well, of course, we're going to have more digital items. And I cataloged digital books, ebooks, for the first time starting last summer and continuing through now. And of course, we have a lot of other digital items that are available, such as scores and recordings. And right now, we don't have them probably described as well as we should, because people aren't using them as much as I thought they might. So that's the next challenge, is figuring out how to make those discoverable so that people will find out all the amazing things they have access to for free.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us for the interview. It's been my pleasure, certainly. I was very excited to do this because, unlike someone like Laura Gale, who wanders around a lot and is very visible, you are someone who, as you described, is definitely a behind-the-scenes person. But, like you mentioned, if they don't see you, it almost means that you've done your job right. So you must be okay with that to some degree. But I'm glad that I was able to bring you out for this interview.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of AML Backstage, and we will see you in the next episode.